First of all, thank the organizers for the opportunity to discuss this paper. I hope you made the right choice. So the topic matter is really dear to my heart. That is, I myself being female, so I always care about what's the role of female in the finance profession and also in the corporate world. So I look at female directors, we look at female CEOs. I also look at risk-taking in a different setting. So basically, the topic matters covered in this paper are very dear to my heart. Then just as Mary presented, this is a very thorough empirical paper, and also the paper is at advanced stage. So what matters to the authors is really to address referees' comments. So I'll try to be entertaining about something you can think about after you send paper back to the journal. So the big picture question, the paper is really about CEO characteristics, CEO personal traits, particularly CEO gender that matters in corporate decision-making process. What the paper uncovered is that firms run by female CEOs are taking significantly less risk in terms of lower leverage, lower volatility of ROA, and a higher chance of survival within the next 5 years. And the paper has done thorough analysis addressing endogeneity, a very long list that Mary didn't even cover, like placebo test and propensity score, 2 ways of Heckman steps, which I don't see that very often in corporate finance, and with also a clever instrument. Lastly, they also look at the underlying mechanism of what's driving the female's role in corporate decision making by looking at a long list of 8 different variables, and they come to the conclusion that most likely the mechanism is due to differences in gender differences in altruism, social norm, and risk aversion. So given I'm the discussant, so let's this is so basic my comments about the paper. First of all, it's about the sample. So the paper is using Amadeus, which covers 250,000 firms, largely private firms and some public firms. Then in the literature, prior work, including Marisonta, who presented yesterday, has a paper about female directors, and they show that at the very top level, maybe female directors, female CEOs, they have a different risk-taking propensity as compared to the lay population, boys and girls. Ladies and gentlemen here. So as such, maybe the authors also want to separate that the public versus private firms, because the risk-taking propensity in public firms for top executives might differ drastically from the vast number of private firms in your sample, where the gender norms might more likely to prevail. So the other thing is that Mary presented a summary stat that about 10% of the firms in your sample is like run by female CEOs. We know that in the US, SP 1500 is less than just a couple of percentage points. So the very fact that your sample gives you the luxury that you have high frequency of female CEOs in public health firms outside the US, it in itself is maybe an interesting setting for you to do more work going forward. The other thing is about risk-taking measures. The paper has 3 risk-taking measures. So just as cross-validation, what's the correlation among the 3 risk-taking measures, right? Your first 2 risk-taking measures, which is leverage and standard deviation for ROA, they are very well used in the prior literature. But on the other hand, given that you're pooling public and private firms, and we know that private firms, I do research on that, so they don't have access to public equity. So by construction, they are very constrained. So they tend to have a higher financial leverage than public firms, and also different from a U.S. setting. Private-public firm, they maybe have different propensity of earnings measurement. That further leads to the call for maybe separate public versus private firm in your analysis. Your third measure is novel, which is the likelihood of survival in the next 5 years. So my question is that true corporate death is mostly due to manager, top manager, CEO taking more risk. You citing one AER paper, which actually show that the likelihood of survival is highly correlated with first female hire in a startup company. So I just so you need some convincing evidence to establish survival is really a measure of risk taking. And furthermore, survival also vary across firm life cycle, industry life cycle. Maybe you want control for that to some extent. The Heckman 2 steps. So basically, you switching regression, you have a probit, so female or not female. Then you have the risk-taking measures for the sample female-run firms and for the non-female-run firms. So statistically, the model is based on a trivariate normal assumption. Well, one of your outcome variables is a binary. So that's why there's a trivariate normal assumption. I wonder whether that has an implication to your third outcome variables estimation result. I really like your IV because it's very difficult in corporate finance to find a firm level instrumental variable meet the relevance, exclusion, restriction, and your IV is driven by the familiarity argument. That is a determinant of a firm to have a female CEO is that very firms, male directors who sat on other firms have female CEO. By extension of that familiarity argument, you could extend your IV is to look at for the determinant of one particular firm's female CEO is actually by both members of the board, both male and female directors. There's a paper about director and CEO. That's an AER paper I discussed before, but anyway. So that talk about there is an interlink between female presence at CEO level and director level. So my suggestion is alternative extension to your variable is the entire board, both male, female directors who had a prior experience in other board that had female director and or female CEO. That familiarity argument still applies. The underlying mechanism, I know you eventually after trying 8 different possibilities, you'll come up with 3. It would be really nice is to decompose all the underlying mechanism to have what's the leftover gender effect. And for your 8 different one-way sorting for agency, maybe you want to combine the one-way sorting into 2 that look at CEO ownership and also cash flow rights together to have the low agency versus high agency. You just have lot of results. Other quibbles, I know you would identify CEO gender by name, by picture, by variety of sources. Is there also possibility that firms may be run by co-CEOs of different gender? Maybe you want to clean out that subsample. Then the other thing about risk-taking, there's a big literature about corporate risk-taking, that there are also other measures. So I gave some suggestions, maybe you want to look at them. Mainly from investment dimension. And the other thing is in one of your mechanism analysis about gender differences in risk aversion, you cite psychology literature which says the gender difference will be manifested during the middle age of 30 to 40, while when you classify your sample, you didn't use the psychology literature result, you use your sample average. So that might, you might want to look at what's really being observed among the population. The greater gender difference in risk aversion is at age 30, 40, while in the corporate world, maybe a lot of people are much older. So you have a misalignment about that. And I also have a number of other peoples. So in the end, I really like the paper. The paper is very thorough. The paper has been around for some time. So it's a great pleasure to discuss the paper. And so this paper contributes to the broad literature about managerial traits in corporate decision making. The author have done thorough excellent analysis. Just a number of fine tunings are called for. So best luck.
Okay, so Mary, you want to respond or take the question first?
I'll take all the questions.
Okay.
This is nice to meet you. I just wanted to understand the instrument a little better. So as I understand, you're looking at this director serving on other boards with female CEOs. That makes them more familiar. I'm just wondering, about the exclusion restrictions. So it could be that they've worked with other female CEOs. They've learned not to take so many risks. So they've been sort of educated out of their aggression by these female CEOs. And therefore, when they're serving on this firm, they're more willing to support less risky policies. So directors also can have some say in corporate policies. So it's broad extent to this.
Okay.
So I like the paper a lot, and my question is more about the interpretation of the gender dummy. And you know, what I would like to say is that maybe the female CEOs of this happen are just better. And the reason for that is that let's say that the distribution of ability is equal between male and female, but there is some discrimination against women, and only the best women can become CEOs because of discrimination. But you know, almost every male can become a CEO, you know, because the females have been discriminated. Let's say that we have 100 firms and 100 potential males, 100 potential females. The optimum would be that the top 50 male and the top 50 female, if they have the same distribution, would become CEOs. But unfortunately, what happens is that the top 90 males become CEOs and the top 10 females become CEOs. So you know, it's not very surprising that in fact female CEOs, because of this selection problem that they're discriminated against, are just better in everything than male. I mean, even if there was no differences in risk capitals or any other aspect, just the fact that we have selection into the fact that the average quality of female CEO is higher than the average quality of male CEO.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting paper, and the associations are very interesting and intriguing. But I think my take on this is that this is only associations. So female CEOs are associated with a few risk-taking activities, but whether they actually impose them on those firms is an entirely different question. And so whether they actually cause those things, I'm not sure that anything in your tests actually addresses the bigger causality issue, because even if the board, even the say firm fixed effects results, if the board makes a conscious decision to risk down the firm and they go for a female CEO, you will actually see a reduction in risk following that. So it's very difficult to do it, and so perhaps one way to do it would be is to look at exogenous turnover events when CEOs die, for example, or something similar.
There was actually a very interesting article about this in The Economist that we put in last month. And one thing they mentioned was that female CEOs are much more likely to be hired from the outside than male CEOs. And so usually they have much less kind of connections within the company, et cetera. So that's maybe something you should, it might actually help your story, but that's something you should probably please kind of control for, because that might affect what types of policies they might be able to implement within the company.
Okay. Last question.
I was wondering, in a perfect world where you had perfect data, it would seem like you see the differences like this. One of the questions would be maybe they're in different industries that are just naturally have different leverage levels. I guess the one thing you could possibly do would be direct measures of risk taking. In other words, are they more likely, or would female CEOs more likely to use derivatives to hedge transactions risk, or they're less likely to engage in mergers and acquisitions? Some direct measures of risk, corporate risk taking that would you'd be able to separate out. I know that's asking a lot from the data.
Okay. Okay.
So, do you know if the effect is bigger in countries where the gender gap is bigger? That would be maybe a way